So we've seen, again, I've been following Richard for 6-7 years. I've seen the different phases too. I've seen him long hair in the dark live streams, 8 hours of just being, Bitcoin maximalist Richard. I've seen him go into, hey, I'm going to build this product. I'm going to get this community. I'm going to build this tribe with Hex and everything else. And then we're like, he's going to, okay, he goes from, I don't want to buy anything. I got all this money. I don't know what to do with it, to outrage marketing, Prada, Burberry, everything. Just want to get this message out, want to make people notice me in order for me to be more effective. And now, fairly recently, last few months or so, he's at least announced humble Richard, made a lot of changes. And those, I don't know if they're part of the film or not, but what do you think that, you said Richard, is the same no matter what, he's the same on stream as he is in person. How do you think his persona changes? Are those, I always think they're just strategic. They're what is needed at the time for what he's trying to do. Are those an interesting part of his character too? What have you noticed around that?
When he submitted the trailer link, he was the one to say that, what you see in the movie is different from the Richard that I am today. And we've not spent time with him recently. And so, I would ask the Hexagon community, what do you make of it? Certainly if you go back on Twitter, and you look at the height of, what he called outrage marketing, there were a number of members of the community that said, hey, like, we don't care for this. We don't like this. Like, you know what I mean? Make a change, shift, do a thing. I think that if you were to check the Twitter stream today, you'd see a fair amount of the community say, hey, we don't care for what you're doing right now. Like, we would expect a change from you. And so, I can't conjecture on anything that Richard is doing. But I can reflect on what the Hexagon community is doing on Twitter. And it looks like, one of the things that has been true, and it's not the largest part of the community, right? It's a small percentage of the community, but there's always, regardless of the choice, there's always someone who finds that they want something different. And so, I think that's an interesting position to be in as a community, is to find yourself, in that truth.
Yeah. Have you seen other, because I don't think I've ever seen anyone switch between personas based on, I guess, I always go back to a strategic, he wants people to see him in a certain light and do a certain way to get something done. Have you seen other people? Do we have other examples of either famous people, rich people, or otherwise that have kind of tweaked what, how they operate, or, the kind of personality they put out there because of certain goals? Or do you feel like Richard is unique in that way?
No, I definitely think that there are a host of people in leadership positions, whether they're public facing or whether it's internal to an organization, or, like, I can even think of myself as in my relationship with my sons. The way I present myself to them has evolved and changed over time. Right. And as a result of that, and it's purposeful. Some of it's just cyclical, right? Some of it is the byproduct of my own experience or maturity or experience, or my personal new level of affluence, right? Like, in terms of success or whatever, meaning I can offer them more resource than I could before. Like, there's a whole host of factors that play into the way that we choose to greet the world and the way that we choose to present ourselves to that world. Right. And so I think that, in every relationship, I think that there's always the dynamic of change and growth and shift and those kinds of things. So, in terms of it being calculated and having, chrysalis, like kind of incubation or any of those kinds of things or whatever, for sure. There are countless examples that exist in the world in and around that space. I mean, like I think of, one person that comes to mind, and I'm not trying to draw an analogy to Richard in any measure. Unfortunately, the analogy that comes to mind is also financial, but the Wolf of Wall Street, right? Like comes to mind in terms of having been able to reinvent a perspective or a place inside of that financial world. So, yes, I think that possibility exists unquestionably. But on a completely different level, look at Taylor Swift. Like the way that she first greeted the world as a musician was very much through the lens of the country music scene, right? Like she was a country music artist. I dare say that there are very few people that see Taylor Swift as a country music artist today. She's a singer-songwriter, pop musician that is setting records with the amount of income that she's seeing, in concert. So like, I think that, there was a period of time where she kind of was off of the radar there too, before coming back. So, yeah, I think that there are countless examples of people who have had that kind of an experience or journey.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, it's just either confused by it or thinking, oh, like you said before, they're either going to like it, they're not going to like it, they're going to have expectations, which we don't do in this community of any sort. So it's always interesting to explore that and just kind of get into like what his. We all would love to see the Richard whiteboard, the war room of all the different stuff going on and ideas and all the work he's not doing for us. But it's just so fun to think about the different things he's trying to do